Good morning. I have a real story that's interesting, at least for me. During coronavirus pandemic, around 4 years ago, some of my organizing committee members, this seminar I mean, talk to one another. Hi, Father, pandemic will bring a blessing for us. Of course, then I raised a question to them. What do you mean by blessing? What kind of blessing? And they answered enthusiastically. Of course, no more seminar in Indonesia. Father, no, we are happy. No need preparation anymore. But you know what happened? Soon another blessing come in our online meeting with Father Jose Mesa. I still remember, inside the meeting, he talked to me personally, Baskoro, I still want to provide seminar in Indonesia. And what is the reaction of from my colleagues from Indonesia? They are smiling, weary, you know, but enthusiastically and said, Father, we are ready. This is another blessing and real blessing. So that's why now we are here. My honorable ladies and gentlemen, as the host, I feel so honored to welcome and thank you for joining this seminar. Welcome to the Brito College, Yogyakarta, Indonesia, where we will discuss and do discernment. I hope through this experience, we all can be more enthusiastic in responding God's calling to be in the extension of His hands as educator. Thank you so much and happy seminar. And now that we are going to watch the video from Father General.
It is with deep joy and hope for the future that I address you all at the beginning of this second international seminar, JESEDU-Jogjakarta. You have indeed chosen a theme central to the mission and heart of the Society of Jesus, educating for faith in the 21st century. No other topic is dearer to us. St. Ignatius and the first companions decided to remain together and found the Society of Jesus to serve the Lord alone and the Church His spouse. In the formula of the Institute, the first Jesuits explained that the Society is founded chiefly for this purpose, to strive especially for the defense and propagation of the faith and for the progress of souls in Christian life and doctrine. Today, we express the same conviction with the formula presented to us by the General Congregation 32, the service of faith of which the promotion of justice is an absolute requirement. When the first schools were founded and Ignatius offered his vigorous support, he was convinced of the extraordinary apostolic potential to make this purpose a reality in this world and context. This apostolic purpose of the schools has been ratified numerous times by the Society of Jesus. Most recently, Father Arrupe frequently stresses that the purpose of a school can only be apostolic. For Father Kolvenbach, the intended objective of the education of the Jews was then, and remains so today, clearly apostolic. The schools are created to teach letters and good morals to the youth, and through children to draw parents and relatives into divine service. Pope Francis just ratified the same purpose in his audience to the International Commission of the Apostolic of Jesuit Education on May 24, 2024. Without doubt, the Jesuit schools have ensured that the message of the gospel continues to be listened to the new generations, accompanied by their characteristic academic and intellectual rigor. Today, we are aware that our world and also our schools are becoming more diverse than ever in terms of religions and cultures. Many of our schools work in mostly non-Catholic or even non-Christian context. We believe that this makes our education more relevant since it witnesses to the good news brought to the world by Christ. This reality does not diminish or water down our apostolic commitment, but enriches. As Father Kolvenbach explains, we should never forget that the first pages of the Bible show the Lord bringing diversity to his creation by distinguishing the night, land, and sea as expression of God's richness. No one tree is the same as any other tree. No one animal, a mere clone of other. In a very special way, each human person is called by this name. As the General Congregation 34 explains, an open and sincere interreligious dialogue is our cooperation with God's ongoing dialogue with humanity. Interreligious dialogue is a work desired by God, an integral element of the Church evangelizing mission, which finds expression in the service of faith and the promotion of justice. Our schools are called today to be apostolic bridges between the beautiful and God-given diversity and our faith. They should help us to make true the dream of Pope Francis. Let us dream, then, as a single human family, as fellow travelers sharing the same flesh, as children of the same earth, which is our common home, each of us bringing the richness of his or her belief and convictions, each of us with his or her own voice, brothers and sisters all. It is also Pope Francis who called our attention to the first universal apostolic preferences of leading people to God, that it is the cornerstone, the foundation on which everything rests. Pope Francis ratified this in his recent audience to IKG. As I indicated in my letter when I confirmed the universal apostolic preferences of the Society of Jesus, the first preference is indispensable for understanding the meaning of education in the society, because without a true relationship between the educators and the Lord, none of the rest is possible. In the recent document, A Living Tradition, the first global identifier points out in the same direction. We are committed to offer in-depth faith formation in dialogue with others. The seminar should provide some guidelines for our schools on how we can honor this foundation as Catholic Jesuit schools dedicated to the service of the gospel in our increasingly multi-religious, multi-convictional contexts. Our Ignatian spirituality provides us with important tools and resources to discern how we can respond to our challenge today. Indeed, our living tradition and education invite us to seek and find what is more appropriate to each moment and each context. Since the world and our societies continue to evolve, this is an ongoing discernment that never ends. Our schools must create spaces for encounter that are true witnesses to the good news and that build bridges that celebrate our common roots and respect our diversity. This does not mean that we hide our Jesuit identity. On the contrary, we must reinforce it as true companions in a mission of reconciliation and justice in our world today. The first universal apostolic preferences, with the other three preferences, offer us the way the Church wants us to work for reconciliation and justice today. It is precisely our Catholic identity and faith formation that lead us to walk with the poor, accompany the youth, and collaborate in the care of our common home. Our faith formation must incarnate what it means today to be present for and with others at all these levels. It is also true we cannot forget that some families bring their children to our schools with the intention of getting support and help for their Catholic Christian formation, and expect that the school will provide a deeper understanding and commitment to their Catholic identity and experience. We need to make sure that our schools really do respond to this expectation and have in place the necessary formation to help students to get a deeper faith experience. There is no doubt that this is part of our challenge today. The fact that some families only bring their children to our schools because of their academic or social prestige should not in no way diminish the depth of our commitment to make available in-depth faith formation in our schools. As Pope Francis often repeats, we live in a change of epoch. This new epoch will require that we all learn to live together as one humanity beyond our nationalities, languages, cultures, and religions, to become true global citizens that embrace their local and global responsibility. In his apostolic exhortation, Laudate Deum, the Pope maintains that we all form a universal family, and we need to learn to live as part of the universe, all of us linked by unseen bonds and together form a kind of universal family, a sublime communion which fills us with a sacred, affectionate, and humble respect. No doubt, our Catholic identity pushes us to deep solidarity with humanity at all levels, spiritual, social, material. This is, in a deep sense, what we mean by Catholic. I pray that your discussions and discernment can help the Society of Jesus as an apostolic body to be guided by the Spirit, and they can, as I wrote when I promulgate the universal apostolic preferences, unleash a process of apostolic revitalization and creativity that makes us better servants of reconciliation and justice. May Our Lady, Mother of the Society of Jesus, and our schools obtain for us from her Son the grace of the apostolic audacity needed for our schools to become places of encounter with others and with God, offering a profound faith formation and religious dialogue that can touch the hearts and minds of new generations and reveals God's unbounding love for all.
Just let us pause for a moment, for a minute, and reflect on what Father General has said to us. Good morning, bonjour, buenos dias, salamat pagi. After hearing Father General, there is not much I can say, but still, we are here today as the Jesuit Global Network of Schools to discuss and discern in common one fundamental aspect of our mission and identity as Jesuits and companion schools united around the mission of justice and reconciliation with God, within humanity, and with creation. We are here together because, as St. Ignatius argues, we are one apostolic body, or as the last general congregations have repeated, we are a universal body with a universal mission. Yes, of course, we work in very different local and national contexts, but our mission is still the same. We are also here because we recognize that in our current international context, the distinction between local and global have become fluid, and many of our most urgent challenges and opportunities made difficult to know where the local ends and the global begins. Indeed, many of our problems have become glocal, requiring new levels of agency and commitment. All recent Fathers General have repeated frequently the reason why Ignatius, and we just heard Father General, Ignatius became ultimately so enthusiastic about opening schools to the point that it quickly became the main apostolic ministry of the Jesuits. Schools were, and I still think it is true, excellent apostolic platforms to share with the new generation the spiritual, religious experience that transformed the lives of the first Jesuits and numerous men and women throughout the centuries. However, we also recognize that in our historic coordinates, we need to discern how to remain faithful to this apostolic goal in the context of our multi-religious and multi-convictional societies. Since the Vatican II Council, the Church recognizes that God also works in other religious and all people of goodwill. How can we, then, offer our spiritual and religious tradition in these contexts? How can we remain Jesuit apostolic institutions and welcome everybody? How can we celebrate our Catholic identity and work for solidarity, justice, and reconciliation for all? These and other predicaments are so pressing and difficult that sometimes silence or denial seem to be better. However, they will not do if we really want to be Jesuit schools not only as a brand of strong academics and social engagement, but as schools that are at the service of the Catholic Church, founded around a spiritual experience that transforms all aspects of human life. In other words, schools that honor that Jesuit comes from Jesus the person for and with others. In this sense, our seminar, Educating for Faith in the 21st Century, is an important step to discern together probably the most important challenge that we have at this moment, and that it has been offered in the Universal Apostolic Preferences. How can we today show the way to God to the new generations? Or as the first global identifier states, how can we commit to being Catholic and to offer in-depth faith formation in dialogue with other religions and worldviews? Pope Francis, as Father General just repeated, has indicated that the first UAPs is the cornerstone of all, because without the first, none of the rest is possible. Pope Francis repeated this conviction recently to Ignatian in Rome in his audience, and reminded us that the center is and must continue to be Jesus. He recalls the role of the Jesuit schools in the effort of evangelizing and stated the experience of the Church for our schools. The Jesuit schools have ensured that the message of the gospel continues to be listened to by the new generations, accompanied by their characteristic academic and intellectual rigor, as Father General also mentioned. The organizing committee has arranged the seminar into 4 interrelated topics: Ignatian spirituality, interreligious dialogue, forming a resilient faith, and educating for faith as Catholic schools. We have already participated in the virtual seminar with more than 600 comments from all corners of the world. Today, we open the in-person phase of our seminar to continue this online conversation, asking the Lord to gain more clarity and discern how our schools can educate for faith in the 21st century, so that we can continue the fascinating journey of Jesuit education in our context today. May Jesus and the Blessed Mary accompany and guide us this week. Welcome, bienvenue, bienvenidos, bienvenidas, selamat datang. Thank you.
Dear brothers and sisters, my name is Widi and I'm the coordinator of the event. Good morning and welcome to the II Seminar JESEDU-Jogja2024. Welcome to Jogja, welcome to Indonesia. Before we begin with all the presentation and discussion, I would like to make some announcements. Very important announcement. If you hear the bell ring, that means you need to proceed immediately to the place where the next session is held. The chapel will be open during personal reflection all day. So if you want to use that place for personal reflection, please. During lunch and dinner on day 1 today, the participants will be assigned 2 tables, but only today. And please refer to pages 107 through 111 of the participant handbook, so you can find your names there. Please have your participant handbook with you always, every day, and don't forget to bring a pen. Next, you can find Ignatian conversation groups on page 101 of the participant handbook. And the first 2 groups, Saint Francis Xavier and Aloysius Gonzaga, will use Spanish during the conversation. However, we hope that the results of the Ignatian conversation would be written in English so that the other participants can read. Now about restrooms. Next to this seminar room, there is a basketball court. And next to it is where the restrooms are located. On Wednesday, 26 June, is the day of spiritual journey. And we will be visiting 3 different shrines on the day. And you will be wearing the blue t-shirt that we provide for you as part of the welcome pack. And we will also be taking a group photo at 1 or 2 of the places. If you find a few pages of your participant handbook jumbled, if you find that there is something wrong with the book, we will replace your book with a new one. So we will have some more books for you, so don't worry about it. On the last page of your participant handbook, you will find a QR code. You can scan the code, and that will lead you to several folders where you can find the materials that you will need for the seminar. Now about water stations. We have 3 water stations around this room. One is here, right here, outside, and then the other 2 is over there. There has been a change in the Wi-Fi channel, and the information will be put up on the glass wall outside. Thank you very much. And I would like to invite Father Jimmy Bartolo, Rector of St. Aloysius College in Malta, and also a member of the JESEDU Steering Committee. So please join me in welcoming our moderator for today, Father Jimmy Bartolo. Father Jimmy, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Buenos días a todos. Are you excited this morning? Great. So welcome, everyone. I hope you have rested and feel prepared to journey together in this process of discernment as a global community. We welcome also our guests who are online. They're following online. There are many people who are following online, and we welcome them. Thank you, Father Boscoro. We really like your story. We really like your story. And I think you all agree with me that all the team, all the organizing team, and particularly the Indonesian team, deserve a round of applause for their hospitality. Thank you very much, Father General and Father Mesa, for your welcome addresses. And now I would like to invite you to be open to this day. This is not just a conference, it's a discernment process. And so I would like to ask each and everyone to have a positive attitude to listen. To listen first to God, to listen to how God is working in me here as a participant, and to listen to others. Today we have different ways of listening to one another. We have a keynote address followed by a dialogue. We have sharing experiences, and this is followed by personal prayer. And we have spiritual conversation in small groups, where we are going to identify the convergences, the divergences, and the tensions that arise from this discernment process. So it's about listening. I would also like to invite you not to be distracted by social media, using your mobiles. As much as possible, treat this seminar and this day as a kind of a retreat where you are really in a listening mode. And then we have other spiritual tools as well that will be helpful today, the Eucharist and the Examen. I would like to present to you our keynote speaker, Dr. Damien Zinda will speak to us on the strand of this day, which is sharing God through Ignatian spirituality. Ignatian spirituality as part of our faith formation and forming the formators. This is the focus of this day. Dr. Damien Zinda is the Director of Mission and Ministry at McCade Jesuit in Rochester, New York, and is on the faculty of Creighton University's Christian Spirituality Program, a graduate program dedicated to forming spiritual directors in the Ignatian tradition. She received her doctorate in systematic theology and Christian spirituality from the Faculty of Theology at the University of St. Michael's College, Toronto School of Theology in 2004. Dr. Zinda specializes in theology and dynamics of the spiritual exercises, theology of conversion, spiritual direction and supervision in the Ignatian tradition, theology and dynamics of Ignatian discernment, and practica in Ignatian spiritual direction. She is an experienced spiritual and retreat director and supervisor who has directed retreats in Spain, Italy, Canada, and across the United States. For those of you who would like to follow her in Spanish, please tune in to your channel. Our translators are behind us. They are watching us, and I would like to thank them for this very, very hard work to translate continuously. And here we are. Dr. Zinda, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you. As with all things Ignatian, I begin with a deep gratitude to the designers, conveners, and animators of this conference on educating for faith in the 21st century. It is a singular honor for me personally, as indeed it is an honor for the United States East Coast province of the Society of Jesus, McQuaid Jesuit in Rochester, New York, where I serve as Director of Mission and Ministry, and the Jesuit Schools Network that serves the Conference of Jesuits in the United States and Canada. It is a privilege to be in the company of colleagues whose passion for our mission gathers us from around the globe to reflect on and to respond to the challenges of individualism and indifference, division, secularization, and polarization that converge to possibly erode the very heart of our Jesuit Catholic educational tradition. Thank you. Thank you for this invitation and the opportunity to lead our work today and how our Jesuit educational heritage and Ignatian spirituality can respond thoughtfully and generously to these challenges. Addressing a global delegation of leaders in education at the Pontifical Lateran University in October of 2020, Pope Francis presented his Global Compact on Education, Together and Beyond. Our gathering this week is the Society of Jesus' response to that address and to Father Arturo Sosa's promulgation of the Universal Apostolic Preferences. Both of these will ground, guide, and animate our work as we discern how our Ignatian spirituality in general and the spiritual exercises in particular can meet the global human education challenges that are set before us. In the Global Compact, Francis distinguishes education from instruction. He calls for a paradigmatic shift on why and how we educate. He insists we leave behind superficial approaches to education associated with economics, educating for personal success and comfort, and utility, standardized test results, functionality, and bureaucracy, because these contribute to cultures of competition, division, indifference, and exclusion. As an antidote, Pope Francis's teleology, what is the purpose of being human, places the dignity of the human person at its center. And education leads us to discover that the true fullness of life comes when we share our personal gifts and abilities in collaboration with others for the construction of a more human and fraternal society and world. Francis, a man of the exercises, reminds us that education is transformative and a means by which we can make our world and our history more human. Education, above all, is a matter of love and responsibility passed down from generation to generation. And as Father Sosa reminded us this morning, our schools are apostolic bridges between the beautiful and God-given diversity and our faith. Important points from the Global Compact are echoed in Francis's recent address to members of the International Commission on the Apostolic of Jesuit Education, given May 24th, 2024. Many of the delegates, if not all of them, to that commission are here with us this week. To focus our work today, I draw on three key points that Francis makes to the commission and to us. First, the ministry of education is an opportunity for evangelization. Second, Jesus must be at the center of our educational endeavors. Third, Jesuit education must yield humanizing results in all members of our institutions, our students, parents, teachers, coaches, board members, staff, and administration. Pope Francis, when he says, and I quote, "Naturally, as I indicated in my letter when I confirmed the universal apostolic preferences for the Society of Jesus, the first preference is indispensable for understanding the meaning of education in the society, because without a true relationship with the Lord, none of this is possible. We must insist on this. Our work, my friends, is about relationship." So there we have it. Our mandate is to lead others to God through the spiritual exercises and discernment within the context of Jesuit education. Again, as Father Sosa reminded us this morning, this first apostolic preference is the center and the cornerstone, the foundation for all that we do. So, how do we do this through Ignatian spirituality? The spiritual exercises are the heart of Ignatian spirituality because they provide encounters with God. Through these sustained encounters, people are transformed because it is God who is laboring in us to restore, oftentimes, a lost humanity. So important are the exercises that Ignatius mandated that Jesuits experience them twice in their lives. Therefore, because of their formative prominence, the spiritual exercises need to be moved from the periphery, that is, being optional, to the very center of our formation programs. And when we do that, we create a culture of the spiritual exercises in our schools. Now, I am not recommending that everyone make the spiritual exercises. Rather, I suggest that they become the central point from which all of our formation programs evolve. If not, I fear that the very identity of our schools is compromised because Ignatian formation is often overshadowed by other demands such as academic achievement, sports, national and local school rankings. Indeed, while all of these are certainly worthy, they are, but not at the expense of the spiritual exercises. Before I proceed, let me clarify. Faith is not religion. Religion is concerned with doctrine and catechesis, institution and governance, rituals of worship and morality. Religion exists to assist our faith. Faith is relational, and it is transformative. It causes profound change in an individual and in society. Sometimes it even affects religion. And because the soul progresses in relationship to God, faith creates mystics of us all. 6 decades ago, the esteemed German Jesuit theologian Karl Rahner wrote this: "The Christian of the future will be a mystic, or he, she, will not exist at all." If by mysticism we mean not a singular parapsychological phenomenon, but a genuine experience of God emerging from the very heart of our existence, this statement is very true, and its truth and importance will become clearer in the spirituality of the future. That future, my friends, is now. Perhaps Rahner influenced Pope Francis, who in Evangelii Gaudium, the joy of the gospel, declares that mystical formation consists of prayer, and for us that is contemplation first, then the proclamation of the gospel. Proclamation of the gospel is not preaching for us. Rather, it is giving witness by who one is, what one does, and how one does it. For Francis, as for Ignatius, contemplation begins with God first, the prevenience of grace. God first gazing on us. Francis reminds us, and I quote, "It is a spiritual gaze born of deep faith which acknowledges what God is doing. When evangelizers rise from prayer, their hearts are open, freed of self-absorption. They are desirous of doing good and sharing their lives with others," unquote. Notice that General Congregation 36 confirmed, and I quote from the congregation, "At the heart of Ignatian spirituality is the transforming encounter with the mercy of God in Christ that moves us to a generous, personal response. The experience of the mystical, merciful gaze of God on our weakness and our sinfulness humbles us and fills us with gratitude, helping us to become compassionate ministers to all. Filled with, first, the glance of Christ's mercy, we can inflame those we meet. This foundational experience of God's mercy has always been the source of the apostolic audacity that has marked the society and which we must preserve. So how is this done? I think Francis has the last word. He says, as you well know, the best way to educate is by example, modeling in ourselves what we want in our students. Jesuit education, Jesus educated his disciples in this way. This is how we are required to educate in our schools. Therefore, everything you can do to make the educators in your schools understanding of this calling is essentially and most important. So how do we do this? Some practical application for us. After the pre-seminar phase of our conference, an Argentinian colleague asked, how can we offer authentic experience of faith formation and encounter with Jesus when most of our faculty, our students, and staff are not evangelical and are strongly influenced by a growing disbelief in formal religion? My response, at its heart, Ignatian spirituality is a humanism that defends human rights, prizes learning from other cultures, seeks common ground between science and religion, struggles for justice, and honors a God who is actively at work in all creation. Using this common ground of Ignatian humanism with the spiritual exercises, I believe can be a formative tool for us. And so allow me to demonstrate. In week 1 of the spiritual exercises, Ignatius sets the reality. There are cosmic energies at work in our soul and in the world. God, who is benevolent, transparent, and self-generous, and the enemy of human nature, who is selfish, secretive, and destructive. Humans created in original beauty and goodness by God, we are nonetheless wounded. We have been sinned against by the influences, events, and environments into which we are born. Being sinned against cripples us and robs us of our identity as God's cherished. The deceiver tempts us to believe, I am not lovable, or I am not worthy of love. When this lie is internalized, we begin to look for love in all the wrong places, from compensatory behaviors and addictions to the subtler deceits of workaholism or the trappings of conventional religion that can dupe us into believing that we are advancing in holiness. My friends, imagine a unit of formation in which we would invite our colleagues to consider their original goodness, lost through wounding, and how the great deceit, I am not lovable or I am not worthy of love, keeps them in the lowlands of misery, arrogance, and pride. In week 2, we have tasted something of God and we desire more. In a sense, we have been seduced by grace and moved deeper into self-exploration and truth. As Ignatius places us person to person with Jesus, a demythologizing occurs, and illusions of holiness are stripped away. Strategically peppered throughout this part of the retreat are the 5 Ignatian exercises that test our desire to be a friend of Jesus. Ignatius is firm. Who will you choose? Jesus or yourself? Our choices tell us what we value. Imagine a unit of formation in which we invite our colleagues to know the God of Jesus in the Gospels. Imagine how the historical Jesus himself had to grow into fullness of his humanity. Consider how friendship with Jesus influences my identity as an Ignatian educator or leader, mission to help children and teens become fully human. Week 3. Choosing love is transformative. Canadian theologian Ron Rolheiser, I think, succinctly captures the essence of the dynamic of the third week. And I quote Father Rolheiser, "The Christ," Jesus tells us, "is a dying and rising Savior whose glory is demonstrated in letting himself be transformed through accepting with proper love and graciousness the unavoidable passivity, humiliation, diminishment, and dying that eventually find him." That's the dying part. But when one dies like that, there is a subsequent Passover to the glory of a heart so stretched and enlarged that it is now able to transform evil to good, hatred to love, and bitterness to forgiveness. There is a subsequent Passover to the glory of a heart so stretched and enlarged that it is now able to transform evil to good, hatred to love, and bitterness to forgiveness. In week 3, Ignatius places us as God places God's very self, intimately with Jesus in his suffering. We suffer with Jesus, and at the same time, we suffer the truth of our own hubris as we experience personal impotence in the face of evil and destruction, and the futility of our egos. Through this suffering, we become compassionate, and we learn the value of vulnerability. That is, the ability to have my heart broken by the story of another. We are humbled as we measure our self-generosity against the total self-gift of this man, Jesus. He experienced all of that for me. Quietly, imperceptibly, at the level of our identity, there is a death to the lie that I am not lovable or valued. My friends, imagine a unit of formation in which we invite our colleagues to consider the passivities of their lives, such as diminishment of health, death, mental illness, aging, war, and even a pandemic. Imagine this is a threshold for identifying the Paschal mystery and how we too have lived that mystery in the particularities of our own experience. Week 4. American theologian Sandra Schneiders wrote, "Mystics have nothing to prove. They bear witness to the existential truth which underlines all experience and gives ultimate meaning to everything else." In week 4, we observe a transformed human being. We call it the afterglow, don't we? Personal healing begins. Freedom and perhaps even an exorcism takes place in the well-secured archives of our own histories. Suffering and death have been faced and laid to rest. And one now stands at the mouth of the burial cave, oriented outwards, silent, still, different, peaceful, free, transformed in Christ transformed for Christ, to see what Christ sees, to hear what Christ hears, to love as Christ loves, without distinction. Our mission? The gift you have been given, give as gift. My friends, imagine a unit of formation in which we invite our colleagues to savor the experience of their own transformation and how they internalize being a man or a woman of the exercises. While Ignatius encouraged adaptability to the exercises, the challenge in this model is to safeguard the Christological character of the exercises and to ensure that they are not psychologized. For this delicate balance, the Ignatian formator must be a person who possesses the charism for formation and has academic credentials and personal formation in Ignatian spirituality. So how do we form the Ignatian formator? The Universal Apostolic Preferences generated provincial apostolic plans for provincial implementation. And if you will permit me, I will use as an example, Walking with Christ, Imagining a New Path, the United States East Coast Province Apostolic Plan, which demonstrates priority to Ignatian formation for mission. And I want to delineate from our apostolic plan because my suspicion is many of your plans might reflect a similarity. Here's what our plan states. We Jesuits commit to deepening our own personal experience of the spiritual exercises, especially through community and apostolic discernment. We further commit to sharing the exercises more widely for the benefit of our institutions and all people we are privileged to serve. By ensuring that the leaders of Jesuit institutions have a firm foundation in Ignatian spirituality. The plan goes on to question, how can we best respond to this desire to strengthen Ignatian spiritual formation for mission? Through the pursuit of the following: to form leaders of Jesuit-sponsored works in Ignatian spirituality and in the Jesuit way of proceeding. The strategy calls for the development of an Ignatian spiritual formation program for leaders for all of our Jesuit institutions. Our province will provide a program for Ignatian formation of directors of its apostolic works, senior leadership, and board leadership. These leaders will experience the spiritual exercises in some format, practice discernment, and, in the case of educational institutions, learning the principles of Jesuit pedagogy. The plan also calls for standardizing formation requirements across all Jesuit apostolates and works. The assessment of these new requirements will be incorporated into the sponsorship review or the equivalent for each of our sponsored works. That is the plan of the East Coast Province of the Society of Jesus. So meeting this goal will require bold steps in forming the Ignatian formator. The Ignatian formator will embody the Ignatian charism, be formed by the spiritual exercises, possess theological academic credentials, and serve at senior levels of administration. Let me explain each of these. First, the Ignatian charism. The grace of baptism, which anoints us priest, one who draws people to God and ministers to those we serve. Prophet, the one who knows God and calls individuals and communities to conversion. And leader, one who inspires, animates, and shepherds peoples and teams. These lay the theological foundation for an Ignatian formator. Like the novice director, who embodies the charism of the Society of Jesus, whose task it is to provide a solid Jesuit formation for the novice, and thereby the sustainability of the Society of Jesus, the Ignatian formator in our schools needs to embody the Ignatian charism. It is not a job. It is not a position. It is a charism. Second, this means that the formator is formed as a woman or a man of the spiritual exercises. In my 30-some years of directing the spiritual exercises, I can recognize the difference between people who go through or make the retreat and those who have given themselves over completely to the graces of the exercises, yielding personal conversion. The Ignatian formator must be the latter, and whose life continues to be influenced, inspired, and challenged by the exercises. Intellectual comprehension of the exercises is insufficient. The exercises must be experienced so one becomes a witness by his or her life. By association, the Ignatian formator will need to have a competent spiritual director who ensures the integrity of the charism and vocation and helps in keeping the formator transparent and accountable. This is critical because the Ignatian formator needs to be formed and trained in Ignatian spiritual direction. One who is able to give the spiritual exercises to members of their communities. And by association, the Ignatian formator needs to be a man or a woman of discernment whose life is governed by the discipline of this art. The Ignatian formator is one who has seriously studied discernment and is able to lead others and our communities through communal discernment. Third, the Ignatian formator must possess academic credentials and competencies in Catholic theology, pastoral studies, Christian ethics and morality, Ignatian spirituality, and world religions. Jesuit formation requires studies in philosophies and a Master of Divinity for presbyteral ordination. Because fewer and fewer of our schools have Jesuits, our presidents, directors of the works, and our boards are increasingly relying on the mission formation officer to guide them in matters of governance with bishops and local religious organizations. Secularization and pluralism demands that the Ignatian formator be proficient in Catholicism, is pastoral and doctrinal, and understands other faith traditions. Mindful that the charism of the Society of Jesus is reconciliation, the Ignatian formator must possess an openness to dialogue and respect with other faith traditions to find a common ground and to close the breach that doctrine can create. My friends, such is our mission. Through reconciliation and respect, the Ignatian formator must be a minister of consolation and love. And fourth, I believe that the Ignatian formator also needs to serve as the chief mission officer, and this position needs to be professionalized. The chief mission officer also needs to serve at high levels of governance and influence in their schools. My friends, Pope Francis is an Ignatian formator, thoroughly Catholic and Jesuit to his core. His life and leadership bear witness to his being a man of the spiritual exercises in a very secular world. Invoking the Jesuit way of proceeding, he leads through discernment, a synodal method of governance. He is a minister of reconciliation. My friends, as we enter into our work today, I pray that we have the courage to be led by God and guided by Instrumentum Laboris, the Vatican document that governs the Synod's way of proceeding, so that by our contemplative prayer, our deep listening to one another, our vulnerability, our honest sharing, and our communal discernment, we can, together and across the globe, share God through Ignatian spirituality. May we bravely heed Pope Francis and Father General Sosa. Let us be audacious in going forward for the glory of God. Amen.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zinda, for your very, very clear presentation. And thank you for challenging us to put the spiritual exercises at the center of our formation programs in our school. I would like to invite you to spend 2 minutes of silence. You have your notebooks here, and on page 80, you have some blank pages where you can jot down something that struck you during Dr. Zinda's presentation, or a question that you might have I would like to ask at a later stage. So just 2 minutes of silence to reflect on this clear presentation. Thank you for this moment of silence. I would like to repeat some important points from Dr. Zinda's lecture. First, that she is suggesting that the spiritual exercises become the central point from which all our formation proceeds. If not, the very identity of our schools is compromised, because Ignatian formation is often overshadowed by other demands, such as academic achievement, sports, national and local school rankings. She then showed us how this can be practiced in our schools, following the dynamic of the spiritual exercises. in week 1, and I'm using the 4 verbs. Imagine you are the formator, the leader. You are, not imagine, you are all leaders and formators. So imagine a unit of formation, this is regarding week 1, in which we invite our colleagues to consider their original goodness, lost through wandering, and how the great deceit, I am not lovable and or I am not worthy of love, keeps them in the lowlands of misery, arrogance, and pride. The dynamic of the first week. Moving on to the second week, imagine how the historical Jesus had to grow into fullness of humanity, and consider how friendship with Jesus influences my identity as an Ignatian educator or leader, missioned to help children and teens become fully human. And regarding week 3, imagine a unit of formation in which we invite our colleagues to consider the passivities in their lives, diminishment of health, death, mental illness, aging, war, a pandemic. Imagine this as a threshold for identifying the Paschal mystery in their own lives. And the 4th week, imagine a unit of formation in which we invite our colleagues to savor the experience of their own transformation and how they internalize being a woman and man of the spiritual exercises. And finally, for this delicate balance, we as Ignatian formators must be persons who possess the charism for formation, academic credentials, and personal formation in Ignatian spirituality. Now I would like to ask you to share your thoughts, your feelings to the person next to you. We start by sharing with the person next to me something that has struck me from Dr. Zinda's presentation this morning, or a question that I might have, and to spend some time in pairs talking about what has struck you during the keynote speech. Off you go.
I will take that as
Pak Ipang yang sebelah sana, belakang sini. Pak Iwawan yang pakai saya bantu ya.
This is healthy conversation. Good energy. You're right.
Yeah, please, please. I think we'll.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Can we now listen to our friends? Thank you for your attention. I know you would like to continue to share for the whole morning, but let's concentrate on what people would like to communicate to this plenary. May I ask you to please tell us your name and the province or region you come from. And first, we're going to spend some time dedicated to clarification questions. So something you didn't understand, something that you want to clarify, we can ask Dr. Zinda, and then we move to another level of discussion, sharing, depending on what the Spirit has done in you during this period. So first, clarification questions, please. We have 4 mics, and we have another roving mic. If you want to stay in your place, just raise your hand and somebody will come. And if you want to stand up and feel more comfortable to put your question on the mic, just feel free to do whatever suits you best. Okay? Off we go. Yes, Father.
Thank you.
Your microphone, please. Microphone. Your name and...
Okay. My name is I'm Brother O.T. Jonah, African Northwest Province. Thank you, Dr. Zinda, or Damien, Dr. Damien.
Damien's fine.
Yeah. Please, you gave a very beautiful talk.
Thank you.
But I need some help here. You say faith is not religion. Categorically, you said that. How can you be faithful without being religious? You see, we need the rituals, we need the worship and all that. And you say, because people normally say, I'm spiritual but not religious.
And
can you
we hear
explain that a little?
Yes, yes. So I wanted to make the distinction between religion and faith simply because we use that interchangeably. And for some people, it means more religion. For some people, it means faith. We need both. We absolutely need both. I mean, Ignatius was certainly when it came to religion, remember in the early days, he sent theologians, right, to refute, and we are in service of the church. But sometimes we get locked in some of the institutionalizations of religion, but we think it's faith. My statement is faith is all about relationship with God first, with each other, and religion is in service of that to help us to grow deeper through the rituals, through the sacraments, through our Catholicity. Yes, we need both. I'm not separating them out. I just wanted to give us some clarity. Because oftentimes, and that has been my experience, that people use those words to mean different things, right? And the exercises are about faith, okay? And religion helps to great question, thank you.
Thank you so much. The gentleman here, please raise your hand, okay, or come and talk here.
I am John Kennedy from Madurai Jesuit Province from India, South Asian Conference. First of all, a great appreciation how you've incorporated, internalized. I'm amazed at the way you have presented. Just in continuation with what my friend has said, faith and religion, I like the distinction you have made. I definitely like that. Is that the way a common man understands? Given Indian context, faith always means religion. Religion always means faith. How do we carry this message forward or to them? How do we communicate in terms they understand better? Because this is a real problem in my country where faith is mixed and confused with religion. Religion is always mixed with faith. So some clarity on that, because this distinction will be essential for the days to come. And I have a suggestion later. I will propose that suggestion.
Thank you, Father.
That is a hard one for me to answer simply because I don't know your context. Like, so what is the common person? How do they understand it? And while, you know, as you say, it's unique to your experience, I find that in the high school that I work in, it's the same. We use that different, you know, coterminously again, right? So how do we do that? I think that's the work of the week. Yeah. How do you like that for getting out of it? No, seriously, I think that is because, you know, we have, when we look at the exercises, right? The spiritual exercises are not about catechesis. They are not, right? They're not about RCIA. They're about that most essential relationship with Jesus Christ. That's important. So some people, and I can only speak from my context, right? When I speak to people about being Catholic, for them it is Mass, period. That's it. And they think that that is faith. It really is ritualization of something, and but they have no understanding. And so I think it's really essential for our work to make those distinctions going forward. Yes, so I hope that's helpful.
Thank you. Yes, the lady.
Ma'am, I am Vinnie Sebastian from India.
Where are you?
Here.
Oh,
please. So when Father Kennedy was sharing, I just had this in mind that some of our students, they think they have faith, but they don't want to follow the rituals, like they don't want to go for Mass or they don't want to say the prayers, but still they say that they have faith. When you said that, you know, these rituals are a way to develop your faith, then there is a distinction there. You know, some of the children, they do not believe in religious rituals, but they say that they have deep faith in the Lord, and they function. So, like, you know, how do we understand that?
Is that a comment for me, or is that a question for me to... If there's a question in there, I'm not clear about what the question is.
The question is that when you said that the religious rituals help us in developing our faith,
yes.
Here there is a different opinion that our students say that they do not need the religious rituals for faith. They do have faith in the Lord, like, but they do not want to go to church, or they don't want to pray. You know, those things they do not want to do. But they say that they have faith.
Yes, I agree. And, you know,
so this is faith without religion.
Well, so I am making the point that we need both, and this is the exact challenge that we're up against, right? This is why we are here. This is the essence of this conference, simply to, you know, to be open to God. How are we going to move through this mission territory? This is new mission territory for us, right? And it is not unique to India. I experienced that back home in the States, across the country. And my colleagues in Canada, the same thing. I experienced that as well. However, you know what I find very interesting? They don't like rituals. How many of your students have tattoos? Right? That's a ritual for them. That is a profound marking of something significant in their lives. If we can make those connections, right, between a more secular ritual and helping them to come along, you know, I think that we can go in their door and help to bring them about to what the bigger picture, the more important picture, the fuller picture here. And the last thing, without sounding arrogant, again, you know, our young people, most of them in high schools, right? I mean, we can remember when high school kids are just stupid, right? They're just stupid, you know, and they're bold, and their natural tendency is resistance. They also, and this has always been my challenge when I've been in a classroom, and I've dealt with boys, is their brains have not yet been developed to make distinctions for themselves. They are often parroting their parents or their friends. But when we give them opportunities to go on retreat, something happens. That Kairos retreat, again and again and again, sets our students on a path of faith and religion. Because it's interesting, after they make Kairos, they're going to, at least in my experience, they have come to Mass. Oh, like, my God, we didn't even ask them. We have Mass at our school every morning, right? And they start showing up. But we have to give them a doorway to come into, because they're up against a lot, right, that promises so much superficiality.
Thank you. We have two questions. The
Yes.
gentleman from the, and then number 2 and number 3, Danny.
I'm Rohan D. Almeida from Karnataka Province, South Asian Conference. Thank you for your inspiring keynote address.
Thank
I
you.
would like to clarify on the concept of Pope Francis. You quoted when he addressed the educators there on education is for evangelization. In the multi-religious context, would like to know what is the definition of evangelization Pope Francis is giving us.
Yes. I am enamored with Pope Francis's writing simply because in mostly everything that he is writing, he is talking about the gaze of God, right? The gaze of God on us first. He says that's the beginning of the relationship, when we realize that we've been seen and it's real. And then we gaze back, right? And that's the beginning of the transformation. The proclamation is who we are. And I think that that is Pope Francis's gift to this conference, because it is all about the transformation that happens not just in our students. I am more concerned about the transformation that happens in our faculty, staff, boards, parents, because we are the transmitters of the faith. Not by proselytizing, that can come later. It's about the relationships that we create with these with our students and our faculty and staff, right? So this was an interesting, if I could just use an example from my own school. I have been at McCoy Jesuit now going on 9 years. And in those 9 years, I have taken close to 50 people, faculty, board, staff, through the spiritual exercises, especially the board. We now come to board meetings not looking at strategic plans. We are coming to board meetings asking the discernment question. That gives me hope, and I share that story with you because I think that's what it's going to look like for us. What would our faculty meetings look like if instead of principals and heads of schools would just go through agendas? What if we did faith sharing? What if we did spiritual conversations first? And then people have a language of the exercises to be able to, this is our Jesuit way of proceeding. This is what it means to be transformative. And honestly, I have to work with my colleagues in Western New York to form spiritual directors because more and more people want to make the exercises. That, the proclamation, right? People are hungering for that. They will say, what happened to you? I want what you have. And that's the greatest advertising, right? And I think that's the evangelization that Pope Francis is talking about.
Great. We can move on to other points, sharing, discussion. May I remind you that you can put your question either in English or Spanish. Feel free to do so. And please stick to 2 minutes, and if need be, 3 minutes, but not more than 3 minutes. So far, you're being very, very short and sweet and to the point.
Obedient.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Damien, for your presentation. It was very insightful. I'm Conrad Narona from the Jesuit Conference of South Asia. I have a clarification on this Ignatian Formation Program for leaders, which you were talking about at all levels. We know that sometimes it's taken as an assumption that those who are in these formation programs have an understanding of Ignatian, the exercises. So because that is basically the basis in trying to understand anything which is Ignatian. So I was just wondering whether this formation program which you're talking about is designed according to the exercises, because you, in one of your points, your 4th point, you actually talked about the contemplation to obtain love, since you made it very general. So that's what made me wonder whether it is designed according to that, and therefore, how would that open up to persons of all faith traditions?
Well, you have two very big questions there. The formation program that I was referring to are certification programs that are coming from our colleges and universities that are assisting us in forming the formator. So I put up Boston College, but I know that Fordham University, those are the only two I know right now who have formalized programs to help form the formator. And it's the curriculum of study is a theology of the exercises, Ignatian leadership, Ignatian pedagogy, discernment, those courses that would be important for the formator. Again, it's helping to professionalize the position, because oftentimes people will come to those positions because they have a genuine love for Ignatian spirituality and they themselves want to share, but they lack the depth that I'm proposing we need to have in order to meet the challenges that we're up against right now.
Thank you. Danny from Fe y Alegría.
Thank you very much, Damian. It has been a very enriching insight for all of us. My name is Dani Villanueva from Fe y Alegría Network. And for those of us who work in a very plural and multi-religious context, I think you have given us a key aspect that I think open up a lot of doors for the reflection during these days, and I want to appreciate that. I just want to, it's not a question, it's just to emphasize that the fact that you say that through our commitment that actually God is in creation, working in creation, we are somehow able of working from a humanistic perspective perfectly from our Ignatian spirituality. The second is that you create a clear sense that faith is about relationship. That means at the end the key element is how to expose the students to God. I think that is the experience side, that is actually what we are quite good at. I think from our Jesuit perspective, we are very good at opportunities and experiences to be exposed to God in many different ways, and the spiritual exercises probably being the main one. I think that those key doors are very interesting for those of us that somehow have a conflict to talk directly about the faith or directly about evangelization in some of our schools. So I really want to appreciate and thank you for that.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you.
Yes, more sharing. Just raise your hands and more sharing. Yes, gentleman here.
Well, I'm Edward from Indonesian province. Yes. I moved with the statement. Okay. Father Ageng asked me to move, so to stand up, because he's my former superior. So,
so the virtue of obedience is working for you, right?
Obedience means everything. Well, I moved with the statement, you distinguish between religion and faith, right? And in my words, there is form and essence.
Yes. Yes.
The form is religion, and the essence is the mysticism experience.
Yes.
Can I ask you, in terms of proselytism, proselytism, right?
Proselytizing?
Yeah, proselytizing, yes.
Yes.
It means that, well, we can move from one form to another form, like we wear the clothes. This is the problem. The youngsters, they feel that, well, the essence is our relationship with God. It means faith without religion, essence without the. Well, we can use any forms that we feel that it's good for me or for the others, like that. For my question is that, can we move from one form to another form, like we move from one religion to another religion?
Yes.
Yeah, this is the point.
Yes.
Thank you.
So can it flow between yes and no? Amen. No, seriously, I think, in another way, we say that our students and even our adults will talk about, I'm really good at the Jesuit stuff, I don't want the Catholic stuff, right? We all experience this in some way, right? And I think that the boldness for us, at least for me and the context and the colleagues that I work with in my province, is I think we have become ashamed of Jesus, or using the name of Jesus. That point is so important, that came out of the compact, right? That Jesus must be the center of all we do. And I think sometimes we are reticent to speak of Jesus because we are afraid that it is going to cause divisions. And I think when on our third day, when we talk about dialogue schools, I think we're going to have a lot more information about how we can retain the love of Jesus and the power of Jesus and the centrality of Jesus and who we are and what we do, and still be respectful and engaging and growing with other faiths, right? So that would be my response to you. But yes, I think it's spiritual and religious. One of the things that we remind our students at our school is, nobody does this alone. We need a community, right? And I think for us, with the students, the smaller the community, the better. Like a Kairos retreat, right? Liturgies on retreat, class masses, those small, more intimate, in which the celebrant is able to be a little bit more elastic in his homilies, right? And maybe even have some dialogue homilies, because we can take some liberties with those unique liturgies, right? And draw the kids out and draw them in. So draw them out and draw them in.
Once again, thank you very much, Dr. Zinda, for your presentation and for your reactions to our thoughts and reflections. We have a break, a half-an-hour break. At 10:25, you'll hear the bell, so that you can come in slowly and we can start at 10:30. You may wish to continue to ask Dr. Zinda your questions, reaction during the day, and she would be more than welcome to listen to your questions. Thank you very much. Thank you. Sí, perfecto.
You are the first one that I need for the next.
Or do you have
What do you have?
You've got Polish heritage. Oh, seriously? Seriously? All of that's in New York? Did John Carroll say no just because of their own financial structure? And I sold them because they're so frustrated. I lived on straight and fat for 3 years. And I did my educational leadership stuff. So I know that it usually let me read the story. When I arrived in John, like 2 months ago, I am that's a new thing. So it's a story of 40 years now. So it's a small people from K to and that's the English super. I'm starting very much. So I did my internship just this year in Salamanca, and then before that I worked in Vienna as a city, but I love GRS because of the training Russian, and so I did that, and also teaching at school, and before that I was great. I've had no for all years. Yeah, it's an honor. It's okay. It's other part of the it's changed, like on the last 10 years, it changes. Yeah, but then there's like, I think openness to the internet. Oh, okay. Secularization, the process is blue white. So,
So my little story, I don't have to go, but it is the 19th anniversary, and that's how we did the song that I lost on the idol. So I started to cry immediately as soon as you did that. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
So I could have
You
down
have
that.
solved
The first grade. Five stars.
Nice.
Hi, hi.
Hi, hi, 1, 2, 3. Hola, sí. Okay.
I like that. That's good. I try to say that too when I talk about Spanish.
I'm always interested in learning other languages. Ya, betul. Spanish.
You can fill your bottle.
Álvaro Lobo. Yes, and we have. Oh, muy bien. Bienvenido. Selamat datang. Good, good, good. Okay. Yes. En español ahora. ¿Hablas el castellano? No, okay. Oh, wow. I love that. Very good. I'm going to read. I'm going to come to the US and see. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And then personal reflection and prayer is over here. Hasta después Can you all come in, please, and be seated? Can you all come in?
I forgot you and Tom last. He's so great. I'm glad he's still committed to doing things. I am too. I am too. But I think that's because of Aaron too. Yeah. Marriage helps.
Can we settle in, please? Come in and can you close the door? Thank you. Okay. Very good. Welcome back. Welcome back to this session. We now have two experiences, one from Álvaro Lobo, whom I'm going to introduce in a minute, and then we have a video with the experience of many past pupils of our schools from around the world. It's interesting to listen to their experience about faith formation in our colleges. But first we have Father Alvaro Lobo. Father Alvaro was born in Valladolid in 1986, and he studied at the Colegio San Jose. It's a Jesuit college in the same city. He joined the society in 2011 and was also ordained in Valladolid in 2021. He is currently assigned to the Zaragoza community in Spain. Alvaro is delegate for youth ministry and pastoral ministry of the Spanish province, and he coordinates also the Spanish pastoral website pastoralsj.org. He holds degrees in nursing, social and cultural anthropology, and a master's degree in politics and democracy. He studied theology at Universidad Pontificia Comillas, and he got his licentiate in social morality from Centre Sèvres in Paris. He has worked in the field of health in France and Spain, and in pastoral care and education at Colegio Nuestra Señora del Recuerdo in Madrid. He collaborates in different pastoral projects and writes on various media outlets. So, Father Alvaro, the floor is yours. He will speak in Spanish, but please then feel free to put your questions either in Spanish and English as you prefer. Father Alvaro.
Bueno, pues.
Well then, good morning, and thank you very much, everyone, for being here listening to us, and thank you for the invitation. It's great being here, sharing our experience from the province of Spain. My thanks as well to Father Bartolo, and my thanks to all of you here. Thank you for your incredible work put to the service of Jesuit education and to the service of faith and justice. Okay, meaning is in the difference. And that is why, through this brief experience, I'm going to be telling you about a journey, a rather conceptual journey that has been done by many of the schools in Spain. And we can say that, at least in Spain, in the Spanish province, in a humble way, we can acknowledge the fact that there are schools where there is a good transmission of faith practiced. We have to acknowledge that, at least in Spain, and I would say in Europe, we do look for our own identity. There are many reasons for that, but the word identity comes up necessarily and repeatedly. And in Europe, we also have the imperative, the responsibility of asking what it means to be a Jesuit school in the 21st century, not in the 20th century or in the 19th or in the 16th century. And on the other hand, as we see in this image of Michelangelo, our identity is understood in our relation with God, and this is why the role that we give to faith in our institutions and in our schools will be determining when facing our identity. Throughout my presentation, I'm going to be, helping to ask or wonder where we place faith in our institutions and in our networks. Why? Because on paper it all sounds fine and we all have it very clear, but of course after comes reality, and if we compare to pedagogical development of the centers, then also sustainability or a safe environment, it's more difficult. What is the place of our faith? Why is it important? Because depending on where we actually place our faith, that is the place where from we will be making decisions on the short, medium and long term, both in small and great centers. So there are really three scenarios where we can see that many of the schools in the DUCSI Spanish network are actually moving, knowing that one stage reacts to the next stage, and that they go at different rhythms depending on the region, or the cultures might happen here where we are in such a universal context, right? And then of course they react according to the challenge of secularization that we are all facing and that we are all concerned about. So then these are stages that are really, they move from one into another. But behind that, there's the idea of a reading of the Gospel from Luke that might inspire us. And that is when Jesus is talking about the most important commandment, which is, and now I'm referring to the story of the widow's offering, quite an interesting story that might inspire us, as Jesus always inspires us. First is to conceive faith in a school as a duty. It's a duty, faith in a school. And in this scenario, which at least in Spain, I could say practically doesn't happen any longer, identity is not so much questioned in any way. And it is assimilated clearly and also on the basis of evidence. So it is kind of the common factor in many schools in Europe and has been for many centuries. But we have to say that now it is not any longer. Maybe it corresponds to times of pre-secularization in which culture would impregnate all the dimensions of society in such a way that getting out of the lane and giving up the way of faith, so to speak, meant to directly or indirectly question or challenge the system. Obviously, this way of conceiving faith had a social, political, and structural component that was very, very strong, because at heart those were traditionally Catholic societies, and in these faith was transmitted in a very natural manner, and the transmission chain was really effective and long-lasting. However, as I say, with not much questioning or reflection, so the key word there would be establishment, right? I mean, so I insist to be out of that was to be out of the system. Within that context, in fact, many of our seniors have lived. I mean, it's the age of my parents, for example, and this made it possible, in a way, to move on to the next stage, because in many contexts, there could be a faith that were rather emptier, because it was very structured towards the outside, but there were some roots lacking within. I insist I'm talking about trends. I cannot think of, any concreteness here. But if we think about the relationship with the poor, which we are so very much concerned about as Jesuit educators, well, then obviously here faith was more of assistance. It wasn't so much the social doctrine of the church or the social justice as we might understand and assimilate in the society right now, but maybe the reference, which is legitimate and was fine, was the works of charity. If we think of the widow's gift or the widow's offering, well, then the role is of the teachers, priests, Pharisees, who are trying to make sure for the system to be maintained. Let us remember that from a theological point of view, in times of Jesus in Jerusalem, life was structured on the basis of the temple. However, it is good to assume that those times have been left behind, at least definitely in Spain. And despite everything, in many people's imagination, there's a certain nostalgia, and some students think, well, our schools are not what they were, or maybe people even out of the church that think that Catholic schools are schools of doctrine towards innocent children. Obviously, this has two consequences. One, proselytism, so we are the best at that. Another, nostalgia for times that have passed and will not come again. Obviously, aspects such as diversity or even freedom were not conceived in the past because, so to speak, the context was different, and schools were considered under one single hue or color, right? The next scenario is understanding faith as a possibility. And here it is, I think, a natural step forward. Faith being a duty moves on to faith as a possibility. And it's fruit of secularization, it has to be said. So we move from duty to contingence. That is, it might be or it may not be, as happens with so many things in our society. However, this the second type of faith lived in schools entails a huge dose of oxygen and air to the church and the different educational institutions. It means plurality, opening, diversity, freedom. It looks for the authentic side of faith, and it establishes a dialogue with the world, as we are told by the Vatican II. And here faith is based more on the works. And the accent is put especially on need, contingency, and freedom. But here we also have the trap. Here lies danger. It's the danger of freedom not well understood and reducing faith only to a personal decision, as happens with fashions or as happens with so many other suggestions that the world puts in front of us. So unintentionally, then, this freedom, this personal freedom, makes faith go down in the scale of values. So there's a sacrifice of faith. I'm going to give you a very practical example. I'm at an age when I can baptize many offspring of my friends, and some say, great, when he or she is older, let he or she decide. That's okay. They want it to be authentic, but they would not do the same with swimming classes, English classes, or many other things, right? So freedom means that faith is being moved or relegated to a second level. What's important is that people feel free to have authentic faith. I haven't got much time, but let me give you an example. In a meeting of directors in some faraway place in the center of Spain, well, there were a number of students giving testimony of their faith. One of them was an atheist, and one of the principals said, why do we have an atheist giving witness of the pastoral? And he said, the other director said, we want our students to be free. Well, listen, sometimes when we talk so much and we want to be inspired so much about freedom, we forget the true value of faith. So maybe this way of freedom that is polluted by marketing relegates faith only to the private world, and this is what happens with consumerism. And in the dialogue, the interreligious dialogue, there is a renouncing on the basis of a false idea of what it is to be lay. And people don't want to talk too much about faith because they don't want to offend or because they want to strive for peace, saying, well, maybe if nobody talks about religion, well, then there won't be any problem. It's what my grandmother used to say. Yeah, if you don't want a problem, better not talk about it. But that's not well understood. And the Enlightenment was not well understood either. And religion is seen as a stage previous to culture. And then we fall into an intellectualist kind of trap. If we have a good look at the relationship with the poor, if you go to a caricature, you see a relationship that is happening in many of our schools. The international baccalaureate students are invited to a retreat, and those of vocational training are given just some days living together, because what's important is that they behave well. And we forget that we have to give faith to the poor as well. And without wanting to, we actually separate, as happens in our schools. And they become schools with a pastoral, where the school has a pastoral, but the school, in fact, makes it become just yet another service, as though you had Chinese or ping pong classes. And unintentionally, this rather mercantile or marketing-oriented vision of faith makes people mix things, and we give up being explicit because we fear to offend, and we still want to get students because, as we know, the Jesuit brand works very well. So it's funny, it's to understand faith as something accessory, only for those who really want it, as though it were a complement or a possibility and another option, forgetting our full dimension. If we go back to the widow's offering, it's kind of the faith of the rich, right? In which the wealthy give a lot, but not the most important. They give only that they have a surplus of. Third scenario is faith as a necessity. And here, from my very humble position in Spanish schools that are references for the pastoral, they have, mainly the directing teams, have understood this way of interpreting and seeing faith. We live in secularized societies, and we might say in some cases post-secularized. To talk about freedom, thank goodness, is a fact, as it is diversity, opening, values, pluralism. So if we go to most of our schools, we see that diversity is a reality. In my opinion, a pretty positive reality, obviously also with kind of fertile and not so fertile possibilities. And we remember that Francis, in the, when addressing the youth, says we all fit in the church. And neither do spirituality or theology or pedagogy defend faith as something that is a duty or compulsory. That would be negative. And this is where the key lies, to go from faith as a duty and an obligation to contingence, and from contingence to necessity, and from what is possible to what is plausible. In Spanish, there is a different subtle meaning between possible and plausible. What is plausible is what can be desired. Faith as a need of the human being that makes us better people, something essential, very much our own, that will possibly happen in the nicest and worst moments of our lives. So then faith It is an invitation to proactive faith in our schools. And this can happen. It can be given without fear. If we go back to the story of the widow's offering, it would be the faith of this old lady who gives very little but gives what is essential because she gives everything she has. It is a transmission of faith, not as something residual or something that's just a part of things in the school, but rather giving faith as what is most important, something that has and includes all the dimensions of the school. So in fact, it is the transit, the passage, and this is the most important message for me to you, of a school as a pastoral to a pastoral school. From the language standpoint, it changes, and this means that there's going to be attraction evangelization, which is what Pope Francis and Pope Benedict suggest. We might fall in the temptation of saying, well, this comes up in classical contexts in which many students are Christian. In Barcelona, and here we have the next director of the foundation, there is a school, a very small school, San Pedro Claver, where 70% of students are migrants, many of them from Asia. And there you have the religiousness lived in a very joyful manner in the school, the Padre Piquet school in Madrid. There are 30 or even 40 different nationalities, and also Muslim students, no problem. They go to Eucharist and they go joyfully too. When I am fortunate enough to celebrate Eucharist with the vocational training students in a Mallorca school, there's no difference to the way that that takes place with the baccalaureate students. If we go back to interreligious dialogue, well, then we remember those words in Fratelli Tutti of Francis. If we are all able to have an experience of faith as loving God and loving the other, that will be the path to fraternity and to interreligious dialogue. And when I say this, I remember a Muslim mother who went along to complain in a Spanish school. She complained to the principal about Mass. The director, of course, said, listen, that is something voluntary, so students must feel free. And the mother said that the Mass was so free that her son was not really going, and she was taking her son to a Jesuit school because she wanted her son, in fact, to learn the Catholic religion to be able to better integrate in the country. Imagine. So at heart, there is a fundamental question coming up here. Do we truly believe that a society with faith is better? And knowing that we as Christians are not better than others because we have the crises of abuse and we are, reminded constantly, but maybe all of us here know that through and with faith, we can be indeed better people. So really, at heart, I think it all goes to this question: where do we place our faith? The colleagues of the Spanish delegation will laugh because I always put this in my presentations. Well, then, I don't know, faith is a bit the cherry on the pie. It's a very attractive part of our schools, but we could also try to make sure that faith is the very heart of the system. And in that true heart of the system, faith becomes a kind of whiskey cake in which liquor, alcohol, and I know you're all smiling here, aren't you? Yes, it's already coming close to the time to eat. Well, that impregnates all the dimensions of the school, so no cherry any longer. It's the whole substance. The closer we are to God, our identity is more reduced, and our path is Ignatian spirituality as the way to transcendence. But if we go back to some words in the gospel as transformation and baptism, we see it clearly. We recognize the identity of Jesus the closer we are to God. But there is maybe a temptation of our times here, times inviting us to identity, and yes, it's true that it is quite propitious. We keep talking about identity, but our identity in a plural world, or at least that's what I've been able to see, identity is not created against the others. You are French, I'm Spanish, as you are blonde, I am dark. No, our identity is built on dialogue, like Jesus with the Samaritan, and in the coincidence with our own DNA that comes from God, nowhere else. So then I hope that as Jesuit schools, then, we ask ourselves honestly, openly, whether every school made up of persons and institutions can, through works and words, serve our Lord. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, Álvaro, por tu ponencia sobre los tres lugares de la fe en los colegios católicos. Now I would like to invite you to spend again 2 minutes in silence. Perhaps could you kindly show us the slide where there are the three places of faith, and so that we can have a look at them. I think they're very clear, and it's a synthesis of what Álvaro has just exposed this morning. 2 minutes of silence. Once again, may I ask you to share your thoughts, your feelings, anything that has struck you to the person next to you for a couple of minutes.
Está publicado en italiano, saldrá pronto. Sí, sí, aquí lo pone que está publicado.
Okay, okay. Can we continue, please? May I have your attention, please? Thank you. You may ask some clarification questions at the end of our session this morning. Thank you for your attention. We now have a video presentation with past pupils from different schools of different continents, some who are Catholic, others who are Christian, others who belong to another religion or lack of it, and they're going to explain to us, they're going to share with us their experience about faith formation in the Jesuit schools. It's a 20-minute video. Let us listen to our past pupils.
And my religion is Buddhism. Despite not being Catholic, Gonzaga has found me to not only be faithful, but also to practice teaching on real life. Many religious lessons came from stories, experience, friends, and core values that taught me about the power of faith. And of course, the tolerance of diversity at Gonzaga. What I appreciate about how Gonzaga taught religion and faith is that they always gave examples. These students not only understood but also internalized them in our heart and mind. Thank you.
My time at Korean high school was much more interesting than learning purpose. We didn't just talk about religion, but rather discuss contemporary issues in an open dialogue with the framework of it. Looking back, I'm grateful for the guidance and support I received from the teachers throughout the years. After graduating, my faith journey continued to unfold. My Jesuit education equipped me with critical thinking skills that challenged and enriched my beliefs, ultimately deepening my commitment to faith. From now and then, we even meet up as a group of alumni from our school to celebrate the Holy Mass together.
Terminer au collège de Bordeaux fut pour moi une très belle expérience parce que le corps professoral a toujours été là pour nous soutenir, nous guider, nous donner des conseils, mais aussi les retraites organisées au collège pour enrichir notre foi ont été bénéfiques pour mes collègues et moi. À travers ces retraites, j'ai appris à ne pas avoir honte ou peur de me mettre au service du Seigneur, à m'ouvrir au monde extérieur et aussi de toujours remercier le bon Dieu en toutes circonstances.
In India, Jesuit education promotes harmony among diverse religious groups by fostering dialogue and respect. We explore various faiths, cultivating genuine understanding and solidarity, emphasizing shared values like compassion and social justice. Our school prepared us to navigate India's diverse religious landscape and contribute to a more inclusive society.
Yo ya que viví mi experiencia en educación religiosa y la formación de la fe en el seminario, usaría tres términos, que es profunda, transformadora y sensible a las necesidades actuales. Por otro lado, si tuviera que describir mi fe, una vez ya egresada del colegio, diría que es más profunda, más madura y en crecimiento. Yo creo que la formación jesuita, la formación ignatiana, me ayudó a mantener o a cultivar la fe, porque de hecho he sido vinculada al colegio y es un poco también el lugar donde yo puedo crecer como mi lugar al cual acudo.
Through my Jesuit experience, something that I realized is that you'll not only get a great education in the classroom, but also outside of the classroom. I was provided with wonderful opportunities that have really helped develop me. To name a few, retreats, mission trips, and volunteer opportunities. And through each of these experiences, I was surrounded by people that encouraged me and pushed me to own my faith and to live it out. I can say with certainty that my Jesuit education has helped shape me into the woman that I am today, in the way that I think, in the way that I act, and in the way that I live out my life. And for that, I am forever grateful.
Speaking about the trust and faith that I have received from my school education. Obviously, one thing that I've learned from my school education is that is to serve society, irrespective of any religion, caste, creed, sex, color. And that is how I look forward in order to serve people around me and also to contribute in some sort of manner so that ultimately the people get some benefit out of it.
So I would describe my experience of religious education and faith formation in Ateneo as natural and personal. I would say natural because the Jesuit way of teaching was really focused on your own personal journey as a Catholic and as a person. And because of that, I never felt like I was forced to believe certain doctrines or scriptures. Jesuit education always taught us to question things, to think deeply, to be humble, and to treat others as equals regardless of where they came from. And even after my university, whenever I'm faced with challenges in my daily life, I always go back to the word discernment because this was a concept that was very heavily emphasized in my education, which is to really think about the effects of what you are doing to yourself and the people around you.
So my experience studying at a Jesus school has been full of joy and great memories. So I made good friends, learned values, and academic skills from my teachers, and it helped me to understand what my life purpose is. I think the way my school shaped my faith is the reason why I have a well-settled mindset. I gained ability to discern, which has been useful for my professional development and my personal life.
What I liked the most about the school was that faith and especially church were introduced to me not as something boring, something you dread, but rather something fun and something you can share with your friends and something that could even be entertaining. Therefore, after graduating, when I moved out to attend university, one of the first things I did was find a new church, find a new community where I could share my thoughts, have fun on Sundays.
Neo's way of teaching encourages students to excel academically with no pressure, developing skills that are essential to help students thrive in the real world and teach good values that help build exemplary character. Ateneo teaches students to be kind, responsible, and aware of social issues. There are also a lot of activities offered to students to make them engage with others along with a supportive community. The school has helped students become well-rounded and ready to make a positive impact in the world.
First, I would describe my experience as impactful. My high school had an approach that relied heavily on reflection, service, and engagement with other people through community service, which really guided me in my spiritual journey and continues to guide me until today.
Every day after the last bell of lessons rang, we're led into a moment of stillness, a time to pause, breathe, and gaze inwardly. For me, time for reflection held a greater significance because this is the time I managed to look and examine my heart, thoughts, and actions, seeking to align them with God's will. Through this, I nurtured my spiritual growth and deepened my faith.
The Jesuit values of critical thinking, service, and reflection shaped my understanding of faith as a lived experience. After graduating, my faith is stronger and more integrated into my daily life. My Jesuit education reinforced my commitment to living out the belief through service and compassion, significantly influencing my path as a doctor. Así que gracias a la formación ignaciana que tuve en el colegio, el día de hoy soy médico de la comunidad, viviendo el lema de Ignacio de Loyola que es lo sembré y creció. Gracias.
At Stony Hearst, it taught me to think about your faith in an academic way, to really go deep into it and to ask questions, and more questions. to also have that personal relationship with God, and to have faith in action, something which I've taken further after leaving the college. I volunteered with the Jesuits in Kyrgyzstan last summer, and now that I'm back in Mexico, I'm supporting the Jesuit mission in Chiapas, one of the poorest regions in the country. It has been a life-transforming experience for my faith.
My Jesuit education gave me opportunities to practice my faith, like attending Mass, serving the community, and reflecting at the end of the day. I can say it has truly shaped who I am. Now, what do you think went right with the way my school taught me religion or formed me in my faith? I remember growing up in Ateneo, we used to hear Mass as a community. We would attend retreats, recollections, and outreach programs. And now, as a young adult, these practices already seem to be a part of how I live my life and how I live my faith.
Sur le plan religieux, on nous apprend à rester en contact permanent avec Dieu, ce qui se traduit par des récollections qu'on a une fois dans l'année au niveau des Roniers, par les messes qu'on a tous les jeudis au sein de l'école, par l'enseignement religieux qu'on nous donne, et puis la présence d'un père spirituel qui nous aide dans notre foi et dans notre marche vers Christ.
Your school were good, especially the Kairos retreat, and learning about St. Ignatius of Loyola was also good.
I was in boarding for 6 years, and our daily routine meant that we had a moment of silence every morning and a chapel session for 20 minutes every day. And through that routine for 6 years, a lot was embedded. Starting your day with scripture, starting your day with reflection. That always created a good foundation for what you needed, and the faith that you developed during that period is something that you can't take away.
Jesuit education gave me the tools that I needed to become that positive leader that I was instructed to be in my education. It gave me the courage to broaden my horizons and move abroad to the United States to further my ambitions, where I have been a member of various clubs and organizations, always bringing a positive attitude and energy into everything that I do.
The Jesuit formation accompanied me since I graduated from school. It is present in my choice to be a public servant here in Peru and to work on social issues to reduce poverty and to increase well-being in families here in Peru. It also helped me to put into practice the phrase, "Love is shown more in deeds than in words."
Since graduating, my faith has grown more reflective and enlightened. The Jesuit principle of cura personalis, or care for the whole person, together with their emphasis on service and justice, has profoundly shaped my spirituality and behavior. This educational experience prompted me to persistently examine and delve into my beliefs, resulting in a faith that is both robust and flexible.
What I appreciated most was the emphasis on freedom and holistic formation. It wasn't just about theoretical knowledge, but also practical application, teaching us to be contemplative in action. Overall, it was a profound and enriching experience that shaped my understanding of faith and service.
In this time, where light is being brought to some of the Church's darkest moments, the Jesuits have strengthened my faith. Commitment to truth rather than blind faith gave my spirituality the room to acknowledge that all people are imperfect. But our imperfections do not excuse our actions or inactions. We must use our light to continue to work through our imperfections towards God's greatest hope for us.
El Colegio San Ignacio, along with the Jesuit education, teaches us how to be unique individuals who can be instantly recognized within a large circle of people. I had the wonderful opportunity to be the first female president of the Students' Council at the school, which left me with a great learning experience. Thanks to the values that the school taught me, such as leadership, empathy, solidarity, and faith, I am who I am today. Currently, I am studying law and have the opportunity to work as an intern at one of the best intellectual property firms in Venezuela. And this is undoubtedly thanks to the values, learnings, and experiences that the Jesuit education left in me and how it prepared me to face obstacles with wisdom along the way.
I've always appreciated that my religious education at a Jesuit institution was non-judgmental and realistic. My teachers met us young people where we were at in our faith and kept true to Ignatius's vision of a practical spirituality instead of an unrelatable ivory tower. I'm personally not the most devout or consistent adherent to all of the beliefs and traditions of Catholicism, but I do think that the Jesuit approach has helped keep that door open for me to continue exploring my faith as an adult and find a middle ground that works for me and my values, letting me give back to my community as a teacher.
My faith has become more personal and reflective, guided by principles of discernment. Also, as part of the LGBTQ+ community, I found a supportive environment, and I try now to apply these principles in my life, even though I don't regularly attend Mass or maintain an active religious practice.
After graduation, my faith has become an active commitment to human justice and dignity. I see my faith not only as a set of beliefs, but as a call to work for a more just and equitable world. And I think that my Jesuit education has equipped me with the tools and mindset to address challenges holistically, recognizing the importance of faith in action in order to create meaningful change in the world.
Now that I graduate myself from there, I can keep being myself and using the tools that they teach me to keep improving myself and keep listening to people around me and being empath to them and help them and listen what they have to say so that I can make a change around me.
In my time at all these Jesuit institutions, I received a balanced understanding about my faith that stressed the importance of God's love and acknowledged flaws of the Church. My current faith life is a mixture of a personal relationship with God and work within my local church and school to address racism and the dwindling young adult population in the Church. I also participated in faith-sharing communities in high school, college, and graduate school that has translated to my current participation in faith-sharing communities with other young adults.
Something that really helped me throughout my formation in there is that I have a really good balance. I am very able to balance my academic life with my social life and my faithful life, if you would like to call it that way. I also have a really strong faith, which has helped me with problems. For example, some people in the first semester of university tend to have a really hard time or they're not very sure, so having that faith really brought me a guide.
The school's formation is really strong, and this thing made it right in the sense that it really shows how powerful faith can be in our life, not just in religion, but in everyday life, like decision making, if this job is correct, if what I'm doing is morally right.
As I reflect on how I would describe my faith post-Jesuit education, the word perspective has stuck with me, specifically the ability to understand the world and people around me from the lenses of others. It has truly strengthened my traits of empathy and compassion. These days, I've stayed committed to my faith journey, but it comes in waves, and I believe my commitment to it has become driven by seeing God and His love in other people, but also in nature. So I hope to continue to build my faith based on that foundation and the foundation built by my Jesuit education.
Every gathering, every fest, every Ignatian week, every camp served to forge in me all the values that are important in my life today. As for what could be improved from my experience, I think it would have been interesting to offer more outings to live the experience of faith when you finish school. I felt a bit lonely because the group I had broke up and no one gave continuity to those of us who wanted to continue in serious life.
Ce que j'aurais aimé pour améliorer ma vie spirituelle ou ma formation spirituelle serait d'avoir des retraites plus régulières, au moins chaque année, afin de faire des expériences telles que la contemplation et la méditation qui m'ont vraiment aidé à mieux me connaître.
I would say that what went right with the way my school has taught me my religion and formed me in the faith is that pressure wasn't given to us. They let us discover and learn of it in our own duration of time since grade 1 up until now, with the right lessons, activities, etc. were given for us to enable an active mindset to our journey of faith in our religion. As we say in our school, Fortes in Fide, faith and does justice.
What I wish had been done different is that when I was preparing for the First Communion at catechesis, faith and religion were explained to me more like a magical fairy tale. Later in my life, this didn't compute with my logical way of reasoning everything, so it led me to distance myself from the church and God until I received preparation for my confirmation. I wish that religion and faith would have been explained to me in a realistic, more down-to-earth way when I was a child. Thank you.
Reflecting on my Jesuit education, I valued the emphasis on critical thinking, diverse perspectives, as well as promotion of leadership skills. However, the Catholic Church's failure to address issues like the negative discourse on the LGBTQ community, women's reproductive autonomy, and the pervasive problem of pedophilia within its ranks remains deeply troubling to me. Despite my involvement in the youth group and the school community, as well as church community during high school, the disconnect between these teachings and my personal values was challenging.
Nonetheless, it occasionally lacked in its ability to embrace a wide array of religious viewpoints beyond Christianity. A more inclusive approach in this regard could have expanded our comprehension and admiration of diverse global religious contexts, equipping us with valuable insights of navigating our roles as global citizens more efficiently.
For this freedom of belief to my school, actually, and this is the thing that went right. We were taught to see God's light everywhere, in every act, community, religion, etc., and to also reflect on war and injustice. So I grew as a highly reflective, critically minded, yet loving and trusting in higher plan person. My experience of faith formation in my school was brilliant. It was natural. I lived every day as one big prayer. I felt led by teachers, as spiritual leaders, and supported by the community. And education on religion was inviting us to be open to vulnerable topics, to not be afraid of fiery discussions, and to understand that we are born here to do the noblest things.
Thank you very much. I hope you recognize some of the faces. They come from your schools. All the regions, all the assistancies were represented in these videos. They come from many, many different parts of the world. We just have a couple of minutes for one or two questions. They are clarification questions. So could you kindly raise up your hand? And if somebody would like to ask a clarification question to Alvaro, please do so now before we go for personal prayer. There will be the roving mic for people who would like to stay in their place and make the question from their own place. Yes, please. Yes, from Chile.
Hello, Juan Cristóbal García Huidobro from the Chilean province in Latin America. Hello, everybody. So you mentioned 3 periods in which faith formation was thought of differently and addressed differently. Those changed as cultural trends and changed. What would you say regarding that in our lifetimes? So we were discussing here that maybe those are like institutional trends, but we are from different ages and different stages in life. Some of us, lived Vatican Council more closely, some more distantly. What would you say to those 3 stages among us, and how does that conversation make it more complicated in the sense that we have different ways of addressing the same thing among ourselves?
Bueno, la verdad es que tenía que pedir ayuda a tantos alumnos que hoy hice un vídeo de respuestas. si creo que entendí.
Videos. Let's see, I think if I understood correctly is kind of where are we now? Or is that not the question? Could you repeat the question because maybe I didn't understand properly? Or tell me in Spanish. Yeah, you talked about stages of faith that are institutional, but there are also personal stages of faith. Some of us were, were formed in some times, and others at others. Some of us were, lived in a place where we felt ashamed about this Jesus thing. Others didn't, because we all come from different places and different ages. So one would get the impression that these three stages you mentioned are also different personal stages, not only institutional. So then it's very difficult to talk together because we all belong to different ages and places, and maybe in some schools they live one stage, in others they have the three living together. Yes, I think to clarify concepts indeed, and to be obedient, yeah? I think that this is a part that helps. I think it's institutional first and foremost, because it helps the team, the board, to understand faith better. Sometimes what happens is that you have the pastoral coordinator talking about faith with the kind of one of the coordinators of a different level, and they don't use the categories in the same way, and definitely nothing to do with faith itself. So I think that this helps us both institutionally and culturally. And if I had to have a look at Spanish schools as a whole, I would say that most of them are between, stages from 2 to 3. On paper, obviously, all of them on number 3. But then you have, of course, the leading teams, and that's the key, because that is what you say too. Those are people, and depending on who they are, well, everything will go in one way or another. Personally, I have never lived the faith of the first stage of the where it was compulsory. I've always lived in the second stage of faith. And I think that young people now, by what I see in generational change, young people are living in this third stage, because everything is so contingent in our world that they need something that keeps on in time, So it's what we were saying. I mean, unfortunately, young people don't really know. I mean, there are religious concepts in which they are really totally lost, because they don't know, or they're not even interested. We have to be honest about it. But that as well means they have less bias, less prejudice. And that, I think, is the door of access. That's where we can go and make sure that the third stage is more favorable, because the second stage is just a moving away from the first, yeah? But the third, as everything is contingent, well, there's something necessary there. That's what I would say. I don't know whether that solves anything. If not, it's been very Jesuit.
One last question, if there is one. Yes, please.
Thank you for your presentation, Father Lobo. It was interesting to see that chart, because when there is a chart, it gives a snapshot of what your talk is about. In your presentation, you mentioned that you were in a school, or in one of your schools, more than 40% are diverse. There's diversity, many faith traditions and many cultures. And just going back to your talk, Dr. Damien, and what you have presented, it requires of us, those who are formators, a lot of competencies to be able to address these various diverse populations. And you said that's what we're going to discuss these 5 days. But still, I would like to know, according to your experience in Spain, what would those competencies be required of us?
Bueno, yo creo que aquí tendría que...
Well, I think some of my colleagues would have to answer. Colleagues who are more kind of, specialists in this. Without going into specificities or into a kind of specialist vision, because maybe I have more of a pastoral approach, listen, I always like the good shepherd, yeah? That is, for them to see that the part of faith in our case is very important, and that we, as a reference, do give importance to that. And so I think that amongst the students there is really they tend to imitate, don't they? They will imitate adults. They mimic what we do, both kind of personally and institutionally. So institutionally, yes, we all know how to kind of define the preferences and priorities of a school. I think that yes, is very clear and pretty important for all of us. And I could call it an intuition. Sometimes I think we feel panic about religion because we don't control it, and it makes us scared. At least in Spain, let me tell you, everything has been left in the hands of the Jesuits, so to speak, yeah? And then you have to work on praying, and people go crazy because they don't know how to pray. Come on, when there's anything religious, it's as though, no, it's too big for us, we can't manage it, yeah? Well, listen, I think there's a part here in which you have to go in deep. You must not be scared of religion or about what is religious, and then our students should see that for us personally and institutionally, it is important. I don't know if that answers your question, though.
I'm sure you have many more questions, which you can ask Alvaro later on. I would like to invite you now for personal silent prayer. I'd like to invite you to maintain an atmosphere of silence and respect people's silence so that we can see all this in the eyes of God and to dialogue with God about this morning. So on page 34, 35, you have some points for your personal prayer. You have some questions. What has captured your imagination? What questions have been stirred within? What is God asking of me, calling me to be? And please feel free to just reflect about some important points this morning. You may wish to use the scripture reading from John chapter 1 to 14 on page 35, and just stay on one or two phrases. And of course, dialogue with God. Dialogue with your God, your best friend, as friends do. We shall meet at 12:05 because we took 5 minutes. I don't think that we have to take it away from prayer. Prayer is very important. It's personal prayer. 12:05 we meet at the refectory. The chapel is open with AC. Choose the place. Don't waste time. This is very important moment during our seminar. Personal prayer. We shall meet then at 1:30 in this room after lunch. Enjoy your prayer, enjoy the traditional music and food, and enjoy the hospitality of our Indonesian colleagues. Okay, let us maintain the silence and move on to this phase of personal prayer.